Take a look right now with our next guest, Ed Mills. He is joining us from FBR Capital Markets. He was a policy analyst for years in Washington, D.C. Ed, we're very glad to have your insight into this. What do you make of Senator Byrd's death? To what extent is this going to change the necessary Senate math?
Well, Deirdre, thank you for having me on. It is a sad day for the Senate. Senator Byrd is someone who is there since 1959. He practically wrote the book on Senate history. You do have a couple of paths to 60 here, and the reason why 60 is important is you don't need 60 to pass the bill, but you need 60 to end debate on the bill. When the bill came out of the Senate, there were 4 Republicans who voted for it. You had Senator Brown from Massachusetts, who's now having some questions about the cost of this bill because of the new bank tax. So he's a question mark. You have Senator Snowe and Collins from Maine and Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa. So you still, without him, that was 61. Without him, you're at 60. The real question now becomes, what will Senator Scott Brown and the other Republicans do?
So what happens, let's just say, if Senator Brown is not in the 60? I mean, can you handicap the chances of the bill being passed?
Sure. This bill still gets passed. I don't think that's in question. What's in question a little bit here is the timing. What the Senate leadership has been doing and will be doing today is just doing a nose count as to how many senators are with them. They also have 2 Democratic senators, Senator Maria Cantwell and Senator Russ Feingold of Wisconsin, who are no's on the original Senate passage of this bill and could be a question mark for this. So they're going to check to see, are the Maine senators with them? Is Chuck Grassley with them? What can they do on those other 2 Democratic no's? And where is Scott Brown? And they'll make a decision later on today as exactly, where that whip count is and how they do this going forward.
And I'm glad you made that distinction, that you say it passes, it's just the personalities could, in fact, change the sense of timing. So that's an important distinction for us to hold on to. If you had to pick one point that you think could be the sticking point, and perhaps you already discussed it when you talked about Senator Brown, that could hold back or delay the vote, is it that banking tax? This is the stickiest wicket in there?
For Senator Brown, it is, and I think it's for a number of senators it is. At the end of the day, I think it is a hard thing to hold your hat on. Ultimately, to kind of say that you didn't want to vote for a bill because banks and hedge funds would have to pay politically is just not popular.
Now, you've said in your research the bill could have been a lot tougher on banks. Which point, if you had to pick one, Ed, are you most surprised about in its leniency?
Throughout this bill, the community banks were clear winners, at least in the legislative text. A number of times you had, exceptions for banks at assets of $10 billion and below. However, as this goes forward, they might have won the battle here, but they may have lost the war because these regulations, once the regulators decide on what they'll look like, can still be very tough.
Ed, Washington, D.C., Wall Street. What are the banks doing now to prepare themselves in the event that this bill does pass, which is, in your view, it definitely will, to get around some of the stipulations? Where's the wiggle room?
Well, it's all a shift to the regulators at this point. I'm still combing through the final bill. At the last chance I looked, it was 399 times where it says regulators shall promulgate regulation. So you can bet that all the banks will be in with the regulators, making sure that it comes out in their most favorable way possible.
All right. And Ed, last question here. Derivatives language, we know that was the tennis ball that was getting hit around on all sides of the court. Do you think the language that we see in the last version is what stands?
I do, but there's still a number of question marks at exactly what a number of those key definitions will mean. What is a major swap participant is? What are the type of low-risk derivatives you can do within your bank? And those will be the real questions to make a determination of what the final impact of that language will be.
Ed, thanks very much for your insight. Ed Mills, financial policy analyst at FBR Capital Markets.